Chapter 8. A week later I went back to see Dr. Krentz. I had been drinking. With debts mounting and no credits coming in, I drank away my wife's resources. I didn't use up her shot stack, nor my kids' insurance money. At least I had the good sense to arrange that. Not even I was that much of a bastard. And the funny thing, I'd been offered promotion at work. I went along with it all, but what did it mean? I knew the whole business was a sham, a dag. I would never be part of the real government. I was one of their many puppets, doing their dirty work, keeping the register going, sending the innocents to the slaughter, little babies and children to the white rooms. What a wonderful little nursery for the upper bastards. News? I asked. Well, he said, how do you feel? I can't feel my right ankle fully. I'm beginning to limp. I have to correct myself. I have to guard myself or make small excuses. I'm protected by my position, of course, and by my meaningless contacts, also by my reputation, and now growing reputation of alcohol consumption. Perhaps I should start calling it grog consumption. So I don't feel so well, Doctor. News? You'll need money, he said, taking off his glasses and wiping his circular lenses. Money? Money, credits, check assurance. Haven't got any credits. That's why I'm here. No credits, no money, no checks, no insurance stash, no dob. The old-fashioned word for credits before money came back into popular slang speech. No money, the doctor said. I'm not talking full price, he said. I'm talking nothing, I said. Then there is a problem. It hasn't worked. Really? I asked sarcastically. Ignoring my tone, he carried on. You've got to get a shot, a lot of shot. It's the only way, or there is... What? A desperate way, which is... Get as much shot as you can and then you cut off the bad flesh. What? Cut off the bad flesh. The shot goes further, less to go in, he joked, and there's a chance the spread will be stemmed. The mind can fight itself. I've seen it done. Your mind seems sharp enough. Perhaps that worked. The disease is contained within the bad flesh. I've done it before. And with what kind of success? Not so good. Some have been cured bodily, but mentally... Where are all these people, if it's true? Thrown into subearth, disposed of, disappeared. It's easy enough, you know that. I don't believe it. As you please. It's all academic unless you've got some credit. You've credated in the past, haven't you? After some deep thought, I said to him, Look, can't you lend me some credit? I'll get you off the register. I'm not on, he laughed. I'll get you back into things. I know people. Save it. I'll do my best for you. Can't promise much more, but I've got no money spare. Krentz rolled his neck and then rubbed it with his right hand. 2 weeks after the dinner party and its aftermath, which confirmed my fate, I was sitting weeping in the doctor's arms. Life had indeed ended. At home I could hardly bear the happiness of my wife. She seemed oblivious to the financial plight we were in, spent her time talking about the baby and how our future would be. She even gave up trying to stop me drinking or asking me difficult questions. She let me do what and how I wished, but all I did was work and drink and sleep in fitful nightmares. My mind and body deteriorated as a result of the disease or my depression, I did not know. Then one night a helper came to me when I was alone. We know you're in trouble, he said. What's your business here? It's late. You know you're not to address me so. We know you're in trouble. What trouble? Z, the baby. And now what? The way you move. We know, we understand. We can smell it. It was the end for me. Psychologically, I was terrified of the disease spreading and of some slow death, some living death. My nightmares played out the same scene. I could see myself laid out on a mortuary slab for dead, but with my eyes twitching alive, my body unable to move. I needed money. I needed some shot. And then, in my own home, my final authority was dismissed. We know where she is. Who? We know. Why are you telling me? You can help us. Help you? I can't help you, and I don't need your help. Yes, you do. I thought quickly. I was at the end of my tether. Tell me what you want, I blurted. Get myself and one other papers, and we'll tell you where she is and when she's meeting him. Him? The man she transgressed with. Again I thought quickly. Okay, I'll do it. I can do it. I sweated. And thus was my fate sealed entirely. Getting the papers wouldn't be too difficult, but I didn't know if they would actually work or not. I no longer knew what was valid in the world I had so recently felt so comfortable in, a world I thought I understood and had control of, a world that was an hallucination. If the papers worked, they, these helpers, would be as free as I was enslaved. Later that night I hugged my wife and told her how much I loved her, and the curious thing was that I loved her more then than at any time before. I began to see qualities in her I had never before witnessed. Her tolerance of my excess, her loyalty, her devotion. At a secret meeting with the helper who had approached me, I handed over the papers. I received from him all the details I needed. Simple, clear cut. I was about to step out of safety. I had the disease. I was on the path to death, and hell was a way station. And didn't I just laugh at the thought of that, its closeness in sound to Wayland. How simple life can be when there are no options. I left a note for my wife and my as yet unborn child. I tried to explain as much as I could, but not enough to condemn her. I hoped I could sort out my troubles and right all the wrongs. What would she think? She would think 1,000 things, but I didn't want them kicked down into subearth. By leaving, by vanishing, I hoped to cover my diseased path. On the way to subearth, I called at Dr. Crence's. He laughed when I told him about the helpers. Thought I was a fool to trust them, but I grabbed him by the throat and told him I would be back. I would have enough credit for a huge shot, a shot no disease could fight, and then I would take my wife and make a life anew. He said mockingly, "Where?" "By the coast, by the sanatoria. Get over to one of the islands." "They'll never let you. You're stigmatized. You're corrupted. The government won't let you live. The catcher will find you." As I looked into his eyes, then I hated him. Leaving everything behind, I took the car and hissed my way through the twinkling city. Everything took on a sharpness. Everything I saw, I ached to have to leave. There was a technological splendour about Upper. If you didn't ask questions, then the upper world was a beautiful place. I cursed Z and her unknown lover for bringing me to this. I cursed the government for its falsity. I cursed the subs for their white, lifeless bodies. I cursed the crawlies. I cursed the rat-infested houses where I'd gone and the room where I'd slept, and all the while I heard the buzzing of a wasp as if it were in the car with me. Before long I knew I'd be listed missing. Then the questions would come. If my wife had the grace to cover for me, I might last 2 days, 4 into the weekend, and I had enough luck to be on a waiver that weekend. Yes, if I was lucky, I had 4 days. Uppers often used die for day. There had been a change in the calendar many years previously. And in my hand I clutched the address, a map written and drawn on shiny paper, and there was the time they would meet, those lovers. My helpers, now ex, seemed to know much about Z's going on. There was a world within a world in Upper. Being unused to holding written material forced my neglected fingernails into the palms of my hands, so that blood oozed. Before I reached the border, with the wind whistling across from the southern plains, I transferred to my digital, went to burn the paper, but decided to secrete it in a tight trouser pocket. Taking the digital from my wrist, I opened my jacket and shirt and taped it to my chest. It was a smart move. This was the only thing between sanity and madness. It was cold outside. The last month, sector of the year had begun. The Xmas obsession was biting in the upper world. Though that close to the border, it seemed as if I had already left. I crossed at a different border from usual. The fence between Upper and subearth stretched for lengths into the distance, cutting the land in two, a permanent scar. Traders sold black swag in shanty stalls on the subearth side. Crossing at that lower border meant a long detour and a longer drive to pick up the main earth road. There were only a series of tracks that connected the different roads to the crossings. The motor hissed, pulling and lifting the car's body as far from the potholes and rocks as it could. I noticed the farmsteads for the first time, the sheds I took to be the animal houses, and I noticed the poverty, the ramshackle nature of the subs' housing, the dilapidation of the farm buildings. It got even worse on the south side, so I'd been told. I also thought about the mystery lands that Z had mentioned, and I thought about my wife at home. Dropping the motor as close to Wayland as I dared, I quickly camouflaged the body and got changed. This time I carried a shooter. It came from Joe's father. It wasn't state of the art, but I figured it might do the job, and it had live shells. I remembered Z carrying fire. When things blew, I knew the tirade Joe could expect from her father. Wouldn't the old man be proved right? I also imagined the recriminations in the office, the accusations, the one person who would be asking himself questions. That is, if he hadn't also disappeared for good by then, the dag arachnid. But I had 4 days to sort things out. A slim chance, but a chance nevertheless. The wind forced me to stoop as I headed for the town. Great banks of dirty grey clouds scudded through the air. This air smelt different. The light was different. I thought of happier times back in Upper, of the serenity we, had found in weekend retreats. Back in Upper I recalled trips to the coast, near the sanatoria where the neurotics and pimps went, where the underhand business was carried on, but it had only been mild stuff, hadn't affected us. As I walked, I thought about the children I had condemned to the white rooms. Babies like Adam had been signed over to their death. I knew what happened there. Most uppers who took any notice of anything knew. For dag's sake we knew. But still there were the myths of the saintly children carried by winged and sailed boats to the islands off the coast, in the mist, shrouded in denser legend, islands that, in fact, were the homes to the convicts, typhoid and diphtheria, to smallpox and the new death, a disease preferable to the disease. The disease none had named was kept to the subs in the white rooms, and to the uppers who went down. I thought about all those who I'd put on the register, thinking only exile to subearth was their destiny. If the ex-doctor was correct, then they were all hunted down. Perhaps even the tales of the catchers were true. We lived in a world where so much good was being done that I found it hard to think of a darker alternative. But it was also true that the Eluluk, the elite members of the founding upper families, high government and military, were in constant perfect health, mind and body. All of us knew about the grown body parts, but perhaps something more sinister was going on. Upper was a world of schizophrenics. Once I'd hoped to be an Eluluk. Joe's father had missed his chance because he had married out, and perhaps he had been overzealous on his campaigns. But the upper world worked. It ran smoothly. It kept out the disease. And if one thinks logically, then it was better that the children went to the white rooms rather than went through the anguish of the disease itself. This was the way I thought, as cold as the wind that blew. Little had I realised that I could never be an Eluluk. Casting my mind back to the long huts, I saw again the rows of perfect bodies and trapped eyes. But this time, as I looked down on their faces, each frozen face was a face I knew. I stopped briefly, checked the digital for information. How was it that the helpers were allowed to serve, but the children were evacuated? This thought ran through my head, yet I knew the answer. The helpers had never developed the disease, could sniff out the crawlies. The children could have had the disease without anyone knowing. It was the stuff of nightmares, but true. The children could harbour the disease for their first 5 years without showing symptoms. We knew. Before the split into the two worlds, mothers who gave milk passed on the disease. Mothers who had the disease passed it to their children. Blood got into the chain from routine blood tests and inoculations when needles were more commonly used. Accidents happened. Children bit and scratched. Children fought. It only needed one incident to get into the sex chain and I took a deep breath. Part of my family had died as a result of one such spread. Before the split, these things were not uncommon. Before the split, every resource was used. And then it seemed simple. To divide, to separate. We had been separated for a long, long time. The divide was further deepened by the wars. By the time of the Legionnaires, we were distinct. But it seemed the best, the fairest way, the most humane. Those who were infected or related or disagreed became the subs. The uppers were left. And at least we kept things clean. And we helped the subs by taking helpers, monitoring, giving money, resources, much. And didn't all we ask was for their people and our people to respect the laws? Yet some transgressed and threatened everything. When I became a government official, working in records and on the register, it was the greatest day of my life. I was keeping the faith. I was keeping the laws. I was protecting all of us, all of our people, and their people. If it meant children going to the white rooms, then the end justified the means. To be truthful, in all my years, there had only been hundreds, not thousands of cases. Before the split, a chain could have killed many thousands. Only one chain. Chains are meant to be broken. I was doing my job, and I lost it. Getting close to the town, I reminded myself of the look in Z's eyes. As I recalled the night we spent together, a part of me knew that my weakness, my recklessness, would risk all again. But I couldn't explain this. It went beyond the lust for her body, beyond the love for my wife and unborn child, beyond the service to my world. It went beyond my own rationale. I did what I did for reasons I could have justified at the time, but truly, I did what I did because it had been my instinct. The sun shone weakly as great balls of cloud diffused its glow. In the outskirts of the town, the same flotsam and jetsam of the vacant-minded and twisted bodies floated in the rat-infested streets. Turning one corner, I watched a sub with rats clinging onto her dead ankle flesh. But life still flowed. The everyday chores of life continued. Smells of cooking permeated the air. The braziers burnt. Children played. Wasps crawled over the detritus left lying in the scuttling gutters. Gutters alive with brown, furred filth. Smoke rose from chimneys. Washing was hung out to dry. Street games were played by limbless men. The able-bodied spat on the dying. Life went on. And as I rounded a sewer-stinking corner, a clammy hand must have reached out. Caught by its cold clench, I was dragged into a crumbling building. Something thudding at the back of my skull took away all thought.